special room chat here. Welcome to the afternoon session and the kickoff of that. We're here with BMO and LAFC to talk about a partnership that's kind of been going for about 2 years now. Well, this is the second season. It's an honor for me actually to be hosting this panel. We were just talking off stage. I worked with the MLS in my previous role at IMG on international media rights and distribution, and we saw several franchises launch in that time from New York City, from Atlanta, Charlotte, obviously into Miami. But the one that always stood out for me was LAFC. An incredible story for those of you that don't know. Coming out of Los Angeles as the second franchise to break the market. Obviously Galaxy had been there before and Chivas had tried and unfortunately didn't succeed. So what we see now in Los Angeles with LAFC and the Galaxy being able to fill the Rose Bowl, 80,000 people quite regularly, really led to what is now known as probably rivalry week, frankly. And I think that's a real privilege to be here to hear this story and this journey. So welcome to Natalia and to Ryan from LA and Shelley and Peter from BMO. So Shelley, we're going to kick off with you, if I may.
Okay, sure.
So last year you entered a groundbreaking deal with LAFC. It's a 10-year partnership. Can you tell us why LA?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to start at the beginning because I think there's probably people in this room that don't know BMO. So we are a more than 200-year-old bank in Canada and a roughly 40-year-old brand in the US, which was primarily concentrated in the Midwest up until last year when we expanded into the West through our acquisition of Bank of the West. And that expansion was primarily into California, and a very, very important market for us within California was LA. So as a marketing organization, we had a pretty huge job to do. In this new footprint, we had to introduce ourselves to a consumer base that largely had no idea who we were. So we had to explain that we are a bank, that BMO's a bank, how to say our name. It's BMO, not BMO. Explain our value proposition and what we were bringing to the market. And in doing that, we had a robust integrated marketing plan. And the cornerstone of that plan in LA was the partnership of the naming rights of BMO Stadium and LAFC and Angel City FC. And if you think about what it takes to make a really, really big splash in a new market, one way to do this is to put your name in giant letters on a building that you can see from the airplane window. But we are not in the business of just throwing our name on things and letting that do the heavy hitting. We also wanted to be very intentional about how we entered this market from a community perspective, and that is where LAFC has been such an incredible partner as they have grown an incredibly engaged fan base over the last decade. So it was a no-brainer for us to find a partner that was going to help us be able to show up like them right away. We had a very serendipitous opportunity to come together to extend a platform that has worked really well for us in Canada. We're the Bank of Soccer in Canada. We partner with all 3 MLS teams up there. Some of you guys are here. Hi, see you up front. As well as we have a grassroots national local soccer program. So that marrying of the professional with the community was a platform that we were able to extend to LA with the partnership with LAFC. I had the benefit of inheriting this partnership. I started in my role earlier this year, so I was not at the table for the initial conversation. So I'll hand it off to my colleagues here, the people that were truly in the trenches as the deal was being done.
Hi everyone. So my name is Ryan Bishara, head of revenue and strategy for LAFC. Been with the club for about 9 years. Had the fortune of meeting Peter and team about 2 years ago when we were getting this process started to do something that was transformative for BMO and also for LAFC, because it was a new reframing after COVID for our stadium and taking it to the next level. And it's a 22,000 seat stadium in the heart of LA, right adjacent to the USC Coliseum, right off the 110 freeway for those that have been there. So really great location and a stadium that has about 70 events publicly ticketed per year, and also the home of Angel City Football Club that started in NWSL very recently. So with all of that, that was the opportunity in front of us to find the right partner. And I think from the very first, I still remember the very first meeting that we had, and when Peter and team came to join us, the difference in what we felt in that first meeting was really why it was a no-brainer, specifically because, frankly, BMO has done it before many times. They know how to manage and leverage stadium naming rights specifically to a level beyond, I'd say, others in football in the US, North America, et cetera. And even globally, I'd put them pound for anywhere. And that was really attractive because ultimately, to be the most sophisticated version of ourselves, we also wanted to make sure we had a partner that would grow with us and take us to another height. And that was definitely what we felt from the conversation, which we'll get into in more depth, but I'd love Peter to add to that.
No-brainers really kind for a brand entering a market for the first time who I think when we first started talking, we didn't even have regulatory approval on a deal. And in an industry like ours, not having regulatory approval on the deal means you don't have a deal yet. So we started the conversations and we took them seriously from our side from day one because we recognized an alignment of values right out of the gate. And I think it's hard to overstate the importance of naming rights for a brand like ours who had that daunting challenge that Shelley was talking about. How do we introduce our brand to a market like California, to a market like LA, where there's two of everything, right? You're competing for attention against Hollywood and theme parks. It's tough, it's challenging. And the brief was pretty clear from leadership. They didn't just want to enter the market, they wanted to win. And we needed to find a partnership and the assets that would help us do that. And we did. And so I remember those early meetings at the stadium, the first walk around. We tried to bring our A game. We tried, and I'm glad to hear that it sounds like we did.
Yeah, I think I would just add that, from the early beginning, LAFC approached building our club, street by street, block by block, one by one. We really set out to be the force for good and bring joy to our community. And BMO has similar shared values of boldly growing the good in business and in life. So as you can see, it's two organizations coming together in this wonderful partnership of just have the shared vision of growing the sport and growing the beautiful game.
That's awesome, thank you. I think one of the things that, in meeting you guys over the last few weeks and days, just a reminder that LAFC is still a very young team. You've been around, 7 seasons now? 7th season? You've already won a championship, which is, as Ryan will show you, sadly I don't have an Arsenal one for reflection. But look, going back to your building blocks, starting from the ground up, you have your own stadium, you have your own real estate. And I think this is going really to you, Peter. You talked about naming rights. Why was the stadium so important in this deal, aside from obviously the front of shirt?
Yeah, it's like I just said a moment ago, hard to overstate how important the fact that naming rights were actually on the table. It's exciting to be a marketer and to, be in the middle of an acquisition and to be challenged by your leaders to be bold. We got that challenge. It was daunting, as I said, and it really shaped the work to go look at the market and surface the opportunities that were there. Ryan, keep me honest on this, but I think when we started talking, your naming rights were the only sports naming rights that were non-contracted for the next decade or so.
That's right.
Right? So naming rights are super powerful, which we'll get into in a second, but they're incredibly scarce. They're hard to get. You can't just go buy them when you want them or when you need them. So like I said, the fact that the naming rights were available and we were looking at an asset that really aligned to a playbook that Shelley mentioned that we know really well, when we started talking, we really approached this as carefully, thoughtfully as possible because the marketing challenge we had was significant and the timeline to deliver was intimidating, to say the least. So why naming rights? You know, why does it matter? And I don't want to minimize our partnership to just the naming rights. We're going to unpack all the other stuff too. But we were faced with a situation where we needed awareness in spades, right? And so naming rights, it sounds obvious, are the best asset to be able to do that. But sports teams, especially post-COVID, have been kind of rolling with new initiatives and rolling out new assets that are awareness driving, right? Hockey and basketball, we're seeing jersey patches. We've had it in soccer for much longer. We're seeing helmet decals. We're seeing erase and replace LEDs and DEDs, et cetera, et cetera. Our research shows us, though, that when you have naming rights, you have a potential to reach up to 70% of a local market. Not 70% of fans, 70% of a local market. And although it's early days in the NBA, I think some research is out there showing that barely 50% of the fan base is able to name the brand that is on those very expensive jersey patches in the NBA. So for us, when the naming rights were available, we really buckled down and put forward sort of a bold plan to try and land this deal because we thought it was going to be able to do something that we wouldn't be able to do just with another sponsorship, just with another mix of assets. And so for us, that's 16 unobstructed views from, Shelley said it, from the sky, from the airplane. You also, LA's famous for its traffic, so when you're sitting in your car, you have plenty of opportunities for prolonged exposure to the BMO brand when you're...
Well, it's the El Trafico, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the naming rights came with premium out-of-home and digital. And we were in a position where we needed a lot of out-of-home. We needed to complement that integrated marketing plan. So, you know, for us, the naming rights are an important feature because it's mission accomplished on brand exposure and awareness. But the partnership offers so much more than that. And, you know, from the tracking that we're doing and the early days of the track, we know it's working. So our launch event, shout out to Amy Potter, Matthew Herrick, Cassie Pruitt, all the BMO people, Jennifer Carley's brand advertising people, all the people that helped us pull this off and launch this partnership, we hit the ground sprinting. We delivered, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I will just add to the impact and the measurement piece because sponsorship attribution is hard. I feel like I don't need to say that in this room. But we have an interesting case study in the fact that we did this marketing launch across other similar to LA markets. We'll use San Francisco as an example, with the absence of a sponsorship in that market, and we're outpacing them in awareness. So we know that of all of the different tools that we have, this is a really, really powerful one.
You go ahead.
I was just going to add that everything that they've been sharing the last few minutes is why we were so excited specifically to partner with BMO for the stadium, because ultimately the level of sophistication related to thinking about measurement, realizing that it's deeper than just the signage opportunities that exist, and that there's a community impact and a force for good, growing the good for business, et cetera, that we, and for the game that we got to do together, that is really what deepens that connection with fans, and ultimately is why we were able to make this sprint in record time, happen in advance of last season. And that ethos and connection is really what made it sing from the very jump, and why we've really together been doubling down on it even this year. So we're really excited about that.
And just, I'll share a quick anecdote that came to mind. And it's, Shelley talked about serendipity. We talked about the speed of the pace that we had to get this done. We're seeing it in the data that it's working, which is great. But one of the proof points that I like to look back to was Labor Day weekend last year, and it was Inter Miami's first visit to LA. It also coincided with the conversion, the full conversion, right, of all those Bank of the West branches to BMO branches. And you need a long weekend to be able to do that, apparently, with banking acquisitions, because a lot can go wrong. It's hard to flip the switch. So we had an entire war room dedicated to monitoring social media, buzz, all those things, because so much could go wrong, and we wanted to stay in front of any issues. Well, that night at BMO Stadium, when it was 22,000 packed, I think 40 or 50 A-listers, Prince Harry, a lot of stuff going on, the war room started buzzing. And they thought, oh no, what did we break? What didn't go right? What went wrong? Well, the reality was there was a soccer match happening. And it was happening at BMO Stadium, our new home. And it's a great little marker for us that shows it was bold, but it was the right play for us at the time.
I would just like to add that I'm most proud of how well we brought the community to BMO Stadium since we kicked off our partnership. There's so much commitment from both LAFC and BMO to give back to the community of Los Angeles. And there's several community programs that we've kicked off at BMO Stadium that welcome that community, including Match Access. We host nonprofit groups such as Para los Niños, I Have a Dream Foundation, Rainbow Labs, all from very diverse backgrounds. And we bring them and give them an experience that they normally would not have. Transportation, tickets, food, meet and greet with players to be able to kick a ball after the game. It's priceless. It's something they'll remember forever. This year, we proudly kicked off the inaugural LAFC Unified Team, which is in partnership with BMO and Special Olympics. We hosted a signing day at BMO Stadium for them, which was so special. Our co-president, general manager, John Thorrington was there, club legend, Giorgio Chiellini, our LAFC captain, Elias Sanchez, welcomed all of these athletes and unified partners. They signed a contract on the pitch, put on their uniform, had a media day, like a normal player would. To experience that for the community was memorable. We host BMO Small Business Spotlights. We've honored over 22 small businesses. They've had a chance to come set up an activation booth pre-match at the stadium to be able to showcase our business. We honor them at halftime. We promote them on social media and newsletter and really give them the platform to grow their business. And that's just some of few programs that we do together with BMO and LAFC that we're really proud of.
That's great. I mean, talking about brand alignment, and I'm going to kick this off with you, Ryan. Clearly, you and Peter have aligned in the jerseys and the shirts you're wearing here on the stage. So I'm very pleased that this partnership is working super well. But how are you approaching the alignment? Because obviously, I would call LAFC a bit of a disruptor in the LA market versus kind of the traditional sort of franchises that we've seen before. Obviously, the fan base is pretty wild. You know, dare we even say similar to Raiders in style. But no, going back to that, how do you see the brands aligning? It's a long-term deal. There's a lot of football and soccer, should I say, going on over the coming 24, 48 months here. How do you see this alignment working, and how are you approaching that as you sort of start this partnership?
Yeah, so I think the great thing in terms of our alignment is that from day one, we had the vision that you just described of what's to come in mind from that very first meeting, and we both had a clear idea of how we wanted to capitalize on it in terms of community impact, like everything Natalia just shared that we're starting to make great progress on, but also do the things that are the right things to do when no one's watching, and having that authenticity and genuine connection to each of the communities that we connect with, whether it's the football audience, both men's and women's, or the concert audiences that come through BMO Stadium, 20 plus shows per year, and making sure that every time they're coming to BMO Stadium or seeing all the activity that's happening around the stadium from the freeway and the streets, all of that is intentional and has a purpose that's bigger than just communicating a message about we're here in the city and the market. It's because we're here in this together to grow the game. And ultimately, because we had that mutual connection top down everywhere across the whole organization, we were able to make record time with the changes we need to in advance of the 23 season to be able to launch this properly. And that work continues on a day-to-day basis together every single day, whether it's launching a debit card together and having the benefits aligned for what our fans need just as much as what BMO needs to be able to drive conversion and also usage of those cards. All those things, all those attributes, all deal points, but ultimately a part of this larger strategy in terms of commercial business, small business, and the fans on a day-to-day consumer basis. All of that helps with growing the game for football globally for years and decades to come.
It was, I'm sorry, I'll jump in here. It was quite memorable experience for me professionally to bring to life BMO partnership. I remember hosting Peter and the BMO leadership team at the MLS Cup in 2022 when I would introduce them as my friends because I couldn't talk about what we were about to announce. We were so intentional and we wanted to honor that everything that BMO was going through with acquisition of Bank of the West, that it was a very small group of us that were keeping this secret, as we called it, Project Avocado, to bring it to life. And thanks to Peter, I survived our PKs to the championship. Thanks for all the pats on the back. And I would say that, it was for us very important that we celebrated our new partnership with all the different elements of LAFC and BMO community. I remember that, as soon as we knew that the announcement date was locked in, we were ready to go. First thing we did was host a town hall for LAFC and BMO employees. Virtual town hall, we jumped on and we made sure that they heard the news first about this groundbreaking partnership. And then we were sprinting to kick off, the home opener and making sure the signage was in place and everything went up on time, quite record time there. And, we hosted a long day of events at BMO Stadium to really celebrate that with our community. We started with the press events where our ownership team, including Magic Johnson, and everybody were there to welcome everybody to BMO Stadium. We hosted 50 students from LAUSD for an honorary first kick on the pitch of BMO Stadium. And then we had a luncheon for Bank of the West employees, make sure that they as well had a special moment. And last but not least, we hosted a town hall with our supporters, the 3252, for them to really meet and get to know BMO as our new biggest partner. And we surprised them with a really fun drone show that they loved. It was beautiful, lit up the sky of Los Angeles, and to really kicked off and celebrated our partnership. It was a great day.
Fantastic. And what about from BMO's side? How are you approaching this?
Well, I think you can see there is truly a philosophical alignment amongst our two brands. And I think at our core, our commonalities are, for us, our customers and your fans are at the forefront of every single thing that you do. We are both very, very committed to the community, and we're very, very intentional about building out our distinctive brands. And so for BMO, what that has looked like from a marketing perspective is, over the years, the creation of a brand construct that is unmistakably BMO. It's our colors, it's our tone and voice, the way that we are very human in conversation. We have a reoccurring character in all of our marketing. It is, we call him the BMO guy. He's played by actor Lamorne Morris, and he personifies the experience of banking with BMO. And he takes a subject that can be, kind kind of serious and makes it really approachable for consumers, and does it in a way that has this really sophisticated wit and humor. And so that is the foundation of what our brand stands for. And then when we're partnering with a brand like LAFC, we had a really unique opportunity with our front of jersey launch, front of kit launch. LAFC approached us and said, we'd love to offer up one of our owners to do the launch content, Will Ferrell. And so, you know, for another bank, that might be a little bit of a stretch to work with Will. Nobody says no to Will, but for us, it was a really nice extension of our brand tone because we had that foundation of humor already. And it's a really good example and representation of when two brands can come together, kind of bring the best of both, and really win the moment. I mean, it was like more than a moment. It was a full media cycle and a really good example of what that partnership looks like when it comes to life. And I think we can show you what it looks like if we can just cue up the tech.
Golden, like my favorite graham-based cereal.
I mean, that really is incredible. A 7-year-old sort of franchise, and then I will ask you, how long exactly did it take to convert all the branding across? Because you keep alluding to how quickly it was. I mean, how quickly are we talking?
We kicked off January 22nd, 2023, when we were ready for home opener. March 3rd?
I'm so happy I was not in this job at that time.
Sounds right.
It was quick. We had fun.
Well, that's phenomenal. Well, congratulations to everybody. And I think this is a good segue into sort of asking you at BMO, and I'll probably start with you, Peter, here, actually. In Canada, you're kind of now known as the Bank of Soccer. And obviously emerging into a market like LA, coming from, you know, the East Coast to the West Coast is a very different thing altogether. Why is this long-term investment so important to you, to the bank, and how are you looking at soccer specifically as the footprint for you guys now?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think to understand BMO and Bank of Soccer, you kind of have to understand where we come from, right? And Shelley mentioned we're a Canadian bank, so you kind of have to understand the Canadian sponsorship industry. There's a lot of similarities with the Canadian sponsorship industry to the US market here where we are today. There's a lot of differences too. One of the differences is that there just aren't as many tier 1 sports properties or assets in the Canadian marketplace as there is down here. And so what that leads to in our category, financial services and retail banking, is a lot of long-term incumbent deals with those marquee professional sports properties. And you pair that too with, I think this traces back to around 2010 when the Vancouver Olympics were happening, where the industry got really focused not just on defending product categories through exclusivity, but also on recognizing the power of storytelling and themes and wanting to build protection around stories as well. In 2010, that was actually the launch of P&G's Thank You Mom campaign, which has been sort of the spine of their Olympic program for a very long time. And so all of that combined means that us and our competitors have used sport and sponsorship to create contrast and distinction and carve out an ownable space. And for us, it's been soccer. It's been soccer for about 20 years, coming up on 20 years now. So long before any of us have been involved on the BMO sponsorship team. So over those decades of experience, we've developed the playbook. We have 3 MLS clubs in Canada. We're the #1 associated brand with MLS in Canada. That's ahead of Adidas. We've reached almost like endemic status. It's what we're doing in the professional game, but also what we do at the grassroots community level. So that's Bank of Soccer. And a couple of years ago, we've been Bank of Soccer so long, we've questioned ourselves, how much longer do we want to be the Bank of Soccer? Should we still be doing this? Is this, how much soccer's enough soccer? What's too much? We asked those questions around summer of 21 because the soccer market was changing. The World Cup was coming. The market ecosystem, we could watch it change. It was a comfortable space that we've been in for a long time. And we started to see more deal activity. We started to see more interest from competitors. We started, to realize, like most people, that Canada was going to qualify for Qatar 2022, a full cycle ahead of anybody having them qualify. So at that time, we kind of redoubled our efforts and said, this moment's coming. We have the best asset mix. We have the equity. This can be a bit of a superpower right now for us. Now's not the time to retreat. Now's the time to get our elbows up a bit, make sure that we have the assets that we think we need to have to make the most out of the opportunity that's coming. And we've been just trying to ride the wave ever since. But I want to add one more thing, and I'll ask Shelley to weigh in on this. There's a bit of a misconception out there that's a challenge for us. Like, soccer's core to our identity. It's not the only thing we do, and it's not who we are. And we as a brand have been, very active and aligned with some of the best sports sponsorship assets across North America.
Yeah, absolutely. I think soccer is an incredible platform for us, and the fact that we were able to take that platform to California has just paid off in dividends. But if you look at the rest of our portfolio, we do have nice diversity across sport. So for us, especially in the US, we look at our brand regionally, and within the markets that we show up, we want to align with the best and the brightest across that footprint. And so we have, in Chicago and Milwaukee, really long-term deals with the NBA and the NHL. So we are very proud of our diverse portfolio, as well as the really strong platform that we've built in soccer, specifically in Canada, and now with you guys.
That's great. And so I'm going to throw it to Natalia and Ryan now. Obviously, from the club's perspective, from the franchise perspective, how do you see the role of the club and how you guys are operating in support of the mission that BMO's on? Obviously, there's a lot less French speakers in California than perhaps in Quebec, but
Not on our team.
but obviously there's a significant Hispanic diaspora there as well. That's obviously something I haven't asked you whether you deal with that or not. But I'd love to hear from you first, Natalia. Just how are you supporting BMO now as you look forward to the next sort of 8-9 years of this agreement and hopefully longer?
Absolutely. I would say that what's been wonderful about BMO is they show up very intentionally within the fan base and really prioritize fan engagement. You may have heard of 3252, our supporter union. They've transformed our match day experiences, a big part of the fabric of our club. And as I alluded to at the beginning, like BMO understood the not just the opportunity, but the importance of showing up and sitting down and building that relationship with our supporters. And that included not just that initial town hall and meeting that we have, it's our continued investment to have that relationship and listen to them, have them ask questions and provide feedback. when we unveiled our jersey, we hosted an event for them to see it first. As we're preparing to launch our debit card, same strategy and approach. I think it's important for us to continue that fan connection, and to have those conversations are crucial.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think we're able to lean on you guys as partners and feet on the ground, and really you have the best understanding of your fans, better than we ever will, as close as we get in this partnership. As well as, we have local leaders and employees in LA as well that we can tap into to ensure that what we're doing is the most relevant for this community while we're operating out of Chicago, Toronto, Montreal.
Yeah, and as long as we are staying committed to helping BMO humanize their brand with our fans and our attendees every single day, and staying very true to that consistently throughout the partnership, no matter how the objectives and the goals may change by different business line or by different community vertical or different event or marquee moment in our history with football growing so quickly, then we are maximizing our relationship and also all the assets that we created together and invested in together to showcase this amazing story and put this partnership at the pinnacle of Major League Soccer, football, be the pinnacle that people can strive for, and other properties can do as well.
And yeah, just to build on that and connect to some content we heard this morning. I heard a really interesting line this morning, like, football is nothing without fans. I think in our case, soccer is nothing without supporters. The LAFC supporters, like, they are the heartbeat, right, of the stadium. And for me, when we first started talking, we first visited the stadium, like, I got really nervous about how blue was going to meet black. And Shelley and I have talked about this stadium as a billboard. And as marketers, it's a billboard. As a supporter, as a fan, it's a cathedral, right? That's their language, not mine. And so we, with a lot of trust, worked really carefully together on trying to figure out, okay, what does our brand stand for? What does yours stand for? Where do we sort of come together, and how do we make that work? And I think we did it in a really special way where you can see the building does carry our blue and our red, but the kit honors the black and gold, and finding those balances. And at that event that Natalia was talking about, it really hit home for me when one of the supporters said, hey, you guys have done more for us, today than the other naming rights partner has in a number of years. So,
Fantastic. So the board is now up. We've got an 8-minute of due time to go. So I can kick off with you, Ryan, actually. There's a lot of growth in this country, especially. New franchises launching. I know there's a couple in the crowd that are looking at future franchises, not just in the men's game, but in the women's game as well. And obviously, there's a USL as well as an MLS and NWSL. How do you, and what advice would you give to those franchises in finding this kind of partnership? Because it's not an easy business. I spent a long time at IMG, and I've got a former colleague in
Scars.
Yeah, I've got a former colleague. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. So how would you go about advising the future franchise and even existing ones on finding partnerships like this?
Definitely. So great thing is that taking the clock back a bit, 7, 8, 9 years, consider where MLS was and where it is today in a few different ways, and then I'll answer the question about how to go about it most effectively. When you think about it, back in 2017, 2018, partnership revenue across the entire league was half of what it is today. So you can quickly see that growth. And then on top of that, on the broadcast side, we were in a place where every single team had a disparate, linear, local broadcast deal. And the national broadcast was also on various different channels at all times. So as a fan, as someone who wants to get into soccer potentially, learning about the clubs they can follow, and ultimately for our brand partners that are investing and carrying the league truly, it came a long way when now, many years later, we're all in one place and it's truly global, and we can actually track to the individual user where the view is coming from, for how long, to what level, etc. So versus before, it was all disparate and very difficult to track real value. So to have that reach and then continued growth also double since that time, it shows where the league is going, where the sport is going, and how the mutual investment that we're making together with our intellectual capital, our assets, and our brand partners' passion and purpose behind growing the game takes to the next level. And so now for the properties that are ultimately looking for whatever the situation is, even the sport, doesn't matter, the keys to finding the right partner, like BMO, for their individual situations, it's always tied to understanding if I'm at the other side of the table, if I'm working at the brand that I'm potentially interested in having be my partner, why would I do this deal? Like, what are the try to be the CMO, try to be the CEO of that company. What are the objectives that that brand has, and how does that connect to what this club or team or sport is doing? We just heard about why it made perfect sense for BMO and how that elevated the entire experience for BMO Stadium and for the growth of the game for future for us. The key is finding that same brand, and that's not easy because they don't grow on trees, but also you have to really think very critically about those objectives and do a lot of research in advance to find the right brand and partner. And that means being forensic with objectives, really understanding the brand voice that you're potentially looking to talk to, and understanding where they're trying to expand, like what markets, what products, what services. Is it something that our fans can actually use? Is it even relevant to them? Is it going to resonate with them? All of the positive sentiment that we've garnered from this BMO partnership, as Peter just mentioned and highlighted from the supporters, our first launch day, that's because there was that intentionality we spoke of earlier, but also it provided us the ability to connect in a human way. And if you can have that human element when you're researching those brands as a property, it makes it the why be very clear and make it a no-brainer ultimately for the brands to potentially say yes to elevate both organizations.
Yeah, I would say partner with partners that have shared values, with partners that have collaborative spirit, and with partners that are committed to growth and success.
Fantastic. Same question to BMO,
Yeah.
but with a slight difference. Where,
Yeah.
what can you advise other brands and where the pitfalls are and all those kind of little things would be great to hear from your side.
Oh gosh, the pitfalls. Well, I think I completely agree with the collaborative and philosophical spirit and finding that alignment. I think the table stakes is looking at your objectives with the partnership and ensuring that those are covered. So for us, it was we have a key market that we need to address. We want really highly visible assets. And then a nuance for us too is to be able to create experiences to host our clients that can't otherwise be bought. So as a bank, that's another really critical piece of us being able to drive business. But then, at BMO, and I would advise other brands to take the same approach, our relationships, whether it's with our sponsorship partners or our agencies or vendors, are not transactional at all. We are very intentional about managing those relationships. We talked a little bit about having the buy-in of the leadership team going into this partnership, and that's huge because that will get you the enthusiasm to get the check signed. And then that's actually like the easiest part. Then you have to build the relationship together. And I think we've talked ad nauseum today about what that takes and being able to show up together and have that level of partnership. But it's not all rainbows. And we have such a great relationship because we can have the tough conversations. We can bring this group to the table and say, hey, this is not working. This needs to be addressed immediately.
Fix it, Natalia.
And Natalia says, okay, yes, it's a solution-oriented mindset. And it's not to say that we get it right on the first try every time and we work through it together, and there can be bumps in the road, and then we ultimately come back together as friends in the end. So I think that's my biggest advice to brands is it's really on you to ensure that your brand is successful, and you have to take ownership of that, because if you just sign the check, then you will get basically the minimum of what the partnership can offer.
Well, fantastic. And I think we are now at the stage where we can wrap this particular session up. And I just want to wish all of you the very best at the weekend. I know that getting through to the semi-final, conference semi-final, is a big deal.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, I think I'd like to thank you all for sharing with everybody your experiences, and thank you very much for having me host you. So, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.